So we're probably still waiting on a few people, but that's okay. I'm going to give a short spiel about the PDP program for those who may not have been in our previous webinars or who are looking to learn a little more about the program. So the PDP program is a pilot program in collaboration with the Department of Community Services and Breton Ability Centre. The goal of this program is to support individuals with varying abilities and mental health challenges in creating a person development plan, setting goals, and navigating/accessing services within their communities. I'm going to put our website in the chat as well. I'm going to find our link for our YouTube channel and put it in there too, so you guys can maybe check out our previous webinars. And you can find out a little bit more information about what we're doing over here at the program on our website. So today we have Adam Gardiner with us. Adam is the Manager of Employee Development at BAC and is responsible for the administration of the Low Arousal course. Adam's going to be presenting to us on the Low Arousal Approach, its history, philosophy, and training. So we have a few prepared questions that we're going to get into shortly. And following those questions, we're going to open up the space for a Q&A. With that being said, when we get into the Q&A, I'm just going to ask people to put their questions in the chat box, and then we'll call upon that person when we get to their question. So Adam, if you would like, you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay, perfect. So before I do that, Emma, also you made a comment there that I think is a good idea. There's some websites and some information that I will share with everybody, but maybe if you could put them in the comments or on the website with the PDP information, that would be great. Most likely people are probably going to reach out to me, but still I think it wouldn't be a bad idea. So welcome everybody. Before I get started and introduce myself and talk about low arousal, like Emma said, I know there's going to be lots of questions, but Emma's probably going to hit a lot of the questions you do have throughout this Q&A. So please wait out or put your questions in the comments in the chat. That would be great. So we'll start with that. Also, I want everybody to know that this is a Q&A. This is an information session. This isn't training per se, although a lot of the things that I talk about today are in our training programs. And also for the specific training programs, we can talk about that at the very end. You know, the price, the availability, what's included in a training program. But what I want to do, or my goal is to talk about low arousal, the philosophy, and to sort of hopefully give everybody an idea of what it's about, because I know it's something not relatively new, but new to some people as more people are talking about it. So my name's Adam Gardiner. As Emma said, I'm the Manager of Employee Development here at Breton Ability Centre. I've been with the organization for 9 years now. I started out as the Learning Center Coordinator because I am a teacher by profession. I spent quite a few years with the local school board. I spent most of my time in the learning centers, working with children with autism and intellectual disabilities. Something I didn't really plan on starting to get into, but my path sort of took me that way. And then when Breton Ability Centre posted that education person, I felt it was really good for me. So I'm really glad I did that. I have a BA and a BED. I also have training in adult literacy practitioners. I do a lot of work with, you know, WCB, Aware Nova Scotia, NSEC, a lot of good partnerships, really around how we can better support individuals. So also what you're here to listen to today is low arousal. I was one of the first instructors in Nova Scotia, but let alone Canada, to be trained in the low arousal approach. So I did that in 2015, and I've taught all over the province, all over Nova Scotia, not just in community services sector, but also in other sectors as well. And as what you're going to find out and learn about as I get going is that this can be applied to any aspect of your life, not just your work life. If you work in health, if you work in community services, justice, you name it, this approach is really a person-centered, which is in line with the PDP, and really a humanistic approach of supporting individuals. And I've heard people say that it is very beneficial for their home life as well, supporting their spouse, their significant other, or even their children. So that's a little bit about me. To start off, before we get into the questions, I'd like to talk about Studio 3 and Professor Andrew McDonald, or Andy as he likes to be called. So Studio 3 Training Systems is based out of the UK. The founder and creator of Low Arousal, who is also the director of Studio 3, is Professor Andrew McDonald. They have over 30 years of experience in the creation of low arousal and supporting individuals with autism, intellectual disabilities, acquired brain injuries, mental health, all over the world, but specifically Ireland, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Germany, South Africa, and North America, and of course here in Canada. Andy is a huge advocate for changing the way that we support individuals, and he is a great mentor and coach to myself and to all the other low arousal instructors we have. So 2 websites I think you should check out. Again, Emma, this might be a good cue to put this in. So studio3.org is the Studio 3 main website. So that's just simply studio3.org, and also lowarousal.com. They're Studio 3's 2 main websites that have a lot of information around low arousal. So if I don't do a great job or even a good job to sort of promote this, I definitely recommend going on their websites. They got lots of information and stuff for you guys to check out. So studio3.org and lowarousal.com. And even while you're listening to me, if you guys want to sort of in the background, check it out as I'm talking, it's not a bad idea. So that's me. That's Andy McDonald, the sort of leader, Studio 3. And I know that Emma's going to be asking about BAC and the connection there later. So I'll save that for the question. So if there's nothing burning or nothing off the hop that anybody wants to hear about, Emma, maybe we'll get started.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Adam. So I guess we don't have any questions right now, so we'll get into the questions that we have. So Adam, how would you describe the low arousal approach?
Okay, so this is a very big question because low arousal approach isn't just one thing. It's a collaboration, a multitude of a bunch of things. But in a nutshell, the low arousal approach is a behavioral management strategy course that we focus on stress reduction and well-being. It is very person-centered. It's all about the individual. We have to really focus on being compassionate, empathetic, forgiving, and caring. It really does look at understanding the behaviors and triggers of the individuals we support. Now, before I go too deep, I think it's very important that we go back to what the definition of behavior is. And we hear challenging behavior, we hear behaviors of concern, we have aggressiveness that's sometimes used to describe a behavior. I think at the end of the day, no matter what we use for today's education session, that we know that it's behavior that challenges us as support people. And to remember that behavior is not always, it should not always be perceived as negative, that all behavior has a function. There's a reason to why the people we support have behaviors. It's usually communicative or purposeful in nature. And most times how I tell people we determine if a behavior is challenging or concerning is how it affects us, how we deal or how we react to that behavior. And I think that's a big thing that you're going to hear in today's session, is the fact of a lot of low arousal and the low arousal approach has to do with how we respond to those behaviors and how we sometimes inadvertently sort of trigger those behaviors, and it's to focus on the individual and try to de-escalate and reduce stress and really focus on the well-being of that individual. So we also look at low arousal as not only a managing challenging behavior course or one that looks at, understanding behaviors, but we also want to look at it as, being mindful and reflective in nature, and to have employees, have staff, have caregivers be reflective in the way in which they approach and support individuals. Sometimes we don't take a step back and look at how these situations would affect us in our own life. I always hear people say, we need to change their behavior. Well, think about your own behaviors that you try to change. For those of us who smoke or try to get healthy or go to the gym, we know the consequences that are associated with that, but yet it is very difficult for us to make that change. So I think it's peeling back the layers and really going from a person-centered humanistic approach of really trying to get that person out of that stress and really have them functioning so that they can learn. Low arousal is also about sort of the short term. It's looking at a crisis situation and finding out how we can, mitigate that potential behavior. So it's in the moment. We shouldn't be trying to teach our residents or the people we support in that moment. It's trying to, like David Petaniak would say, and I'll talk about him later, trying to teach somebody how to swim when they're drowning is probably not the best time to teach them. You might want to pull them out of the water, get them to safety, make sure that they're safe and that they feel like they're in that mindset that they can learn. Then we work on maybe changing that behavior or teaching better life skills in that moment. So it's really trying to de-escalate and de-stress that individual. So how do you do that? It's easier said than done. I know probably some of you are thinking. So I'd like to go through like a framework of some of the key topics in which we try to promote when we're applying low arousal. And it all starts with the fact that we as caregivers need to appear calm. Now, I know people are thinking, easier said than done. I'm not saying stay calm, because you're probably not going to be staying calm in that situation. But if people around us, our peers, our coworkers, can see that we appear calm in that situation, and the resident and the person we're supporting is looking at us, through the stressed lens, if they see that we seem like we have some control in that situation, then it could actually naturally, bring emotions down. We also like to say that in the low arousal approach, we don't want to pour fuel on the fire. So this is really a cultural change of how we deal with situations. So if a resident, does something to us that's negative in nature, they say something or they call us something, and they come to apologize. I'm not going to respond with, get away from me. You just said that, it really hurt. You just go. Like, I'm not dealing with you right now. To me, that's pouring fuel on the fire. It's looking at that this person is stressed. They've just had trauma. They maybe are recognizing that they've done wrong or harmed, or maybe they're just simply hearing other people saying that so-and-so did this to that staff. So you really want to make sure that you don't pour fuel on that fire in that moment, and that you accept that you be that empathetic person, to build that relationship so that, the rest of the day can go well and you can find those teachable moments. So as we continue on, we think about, okay, you're in a crisis, you're in a difficult situation. Think about personal space, right? First thing we want to do is we want to give them space, step away from them. COVID is perfect. It's a perfect time to associate personal space, because we're teaching everybody how to do this because of COVID, and we want to make sure that we stay safe. So when a resident is stressed, we should be doing the same thing. If we're invading their personal space, then you're leaving yourself not only open to sort of that emotional trauma, but that physical trauma. Somebody can't touch you, can't grab you, can't really get at you if you are away and you have the opportunity to escape from that situation. Also, as we know that, personal space, and we think if we go back to when universities do these social experiments, and you have somebody sitting on a park bench, and then a stranger comes over and sits on the park bench next to them, what's going to be the person's response to that, because they invaded their personal space? We're going to talk about hypo and hyperarousal later, and we're going to talk about fight, flight, and freeze. Before we even get there, that personal space initiates sort of that first reaction. Then we move on to eye contact. So we think about personal space, we want to stay away from them. Then we think about eye contact. And we want to get away from the old school mindset of, you got to stare the person down. You got to show them who's boss. That eye contact elicits that, emotional response, good, bad, it's something that we want to be mindful of. And in our sector, sometimes even a resident who's in stress that's looking for that response will wait for somebody to make that eye contact with them. And it's, and I try to be very mindful of my phrases, but, oh, I got them now is sort of the analogy that sometimes people will use in that situation. So keep your space, be mindful of your eye contact. Next, we're going to move on to touch. And we think about the physiological things and changes within our body that happen when somebody touches us on a good day. But think if you're very stressed and you have somebody coming over and putting their hand on you. You think of a situation where maybe you and a partner, you and a spouse, or even you and a friend are in an argument, and the person comes over, puts their hand on you, trying goodwill to console you and to de-escalate you. And what does it feel like? It feels like pins and needles going through your hand. Some people will even go as far to remove their hand or rip their hand away because they're so heightened, and it just adds that extra sensory level onto that person. Tone of voice. Now, I'm going to go through them all, and I know it's going to seem long-winded, but hopefully as we go through the entire sort of process, you'll get the idea of what we're trying to encompass here. So tone, how we simply talk to an individual. Now, as you can probably tell, I can talk a lot, and I'm very hyper, and I'm very intense and loud, and I sometimes need to recognize that, that's not always best for people. But if you think about our individuals we support and our tone of voice, sometimes it's our tone alone that could, have our resident recognize whether this person is happy with me, sad, mad, whatever it may be. So I think of the word no. No is a word we probably should try to replace with not now, maybe later, work on your program, whatever, but how we say it, simply saying, if Emma says, Adam, can we cut early today? I think everybody would enjoy to get out a little bit early, and I say, no, I think we need to stick it out. That's not bad. But if I say, no, that's not happening. Same message, but obviously it can affect people very differently. So it's being mindful of that when we are, supporting the individuals. Plus, it's contagious. If people are really applying the low arousal and they're really using that philosophy, other people start to see it and say, oh, it seems like they're getting further ahead by applying this, so it's contagious and other people apply it as well. So after tone, we think about our verbal and nonverbal cues. These are very pivotal in the low arousal approach because some of our individuals we support are non-communicative. They can't talk, they're nonverbal, and they really rely on their nonverbal communication. So from a staff perspective or a care perspective, we want to think about how we look when we're standing in front of the individual we're supporting. So, the arms crossed or the hands on the hips, a resident asking us to do something and we're tapping our finger and tapping our feet and rolling our eyes as we're giving them an answer. Well, they might not even hear a word you're saying, and they're simply looking at your body language and it's telling them something else. So that nonverbal cue is very important. You want to be non-threatening and open, because that's where the communication is going to be. And as we're going to get into later, I'm going to say that probably a lot today, is relationships. Traumatic events and relationships. The people we support are going to be they're going to put a lot of weight into how you treat them and the experiences you have with one another. So you want to really make sure that all of your interactions, or as many of them as possible, are positive in nature. Verbal cues, straightforward. Think about your language, think about your words, try to be very positive in nature. I know no has to be used sometimes, or at least from some people's perspective, but we really need to be mindful that the people we're supporting know could actually mean forever. You know, not right now, maybe later doesn't mean no forever, but to some of the people we support, once you say no, it's definite, it's infinite, it's well, I have no chance of, you know, getting it to a maybe or a yes. So we need to be mindful of how we communicate that verbal. Noise, little easier for when we're supporting individuals who are more of a community-based living arrangement, because you can control the noise a little bit more. You have less people. You know, you don't have the industrial fans and air conditioners running. You have, you know, the TVs you can turn down, but noise can really, you know, really eliminating or minimizing noise can really mitigate some of the, you know, challenging behaviors or situations we see. So we really try to remove the noise. So if we have a few residents who are very loud, and we feel like we can get them out into the community for a drive out in the yard, we might remove them so that we can minimize the noise for that resident who is stressed and who is starting to trigger with behaviors. Our staff here do, we have one neighborhood specifically that we have a lot of residents that sometimes interact at the same time, and our staff do an amazing job of really applying these principles, because, you know, they know the importance of mitigating or minimizing that noise in that situation. And I didn't even go into the autistic individuals we support and you know, the sensory overload that, you know, right now there's an air conditioning going on. I really can't hear it, or I'm not aware of it because I'm focused on what I'm doing, but to them, it could sound like a rocket ship that's going on behind them. So picture us trying to support them, teach them, you know, try to de-escalate and de-stress them while all these sensory factors are going on. I'm almost done. Then we want to think about removing others. So, you know, well, why would you remove others if the person that is displaying the behavior is the one that's of concern? Well, I like the analogy that I was given by one of my mentors, my instructors. If there's a fire in a room, are you going to remove the fire, or are you going to remove the people? And most times it's easier to remove the people than it is to put out the fire in that situation. And what that does also, by removing others, it allows you the opportunity to have that one-on-one, or minimize, as we just went through all the low arousal principles, to give you that opportunity to, you know, have that one-on-one, to, you know, eliminate all those stressors of eyes and you know, people looking and watching and listening, because it doesn't just affect us as staff, it affects our residents and the people we support as well. You know, not the greatest example, but you know, when you're in school, or at least when I was growing up in school, and you know, there was a, you know, a discussion or a debate between two people that gets heated. Usually, for the most part, it would remain quite civil between the two individuals. It was just them. They'd usually work it out. But once you start adding an audience, and you start adding people, and you adding that pressure, you can feel those eyes, you know, you feel that sort of opportunity that people may judge. So it just puts a little bit more stress on you and the residents. So we try to remove others as well. We also want to think about distractions and redirectors. So these are things that, and getting back to why I'm here, and the person-centered, you know, the person-centered, the PDPs, which is pivotal. You need to know the person you're supporting. We don't paintbrush people anymore. Everything needs to be person-centered and to the individual. Having redirectors and distractors are so important, because these are things that you should have, that you try to remove them from that stressor that's causing them stress. So things that they like, pictures of cars. You know, you're not going to use something like a car on somebody who hates cars. You're going to use it on the people that like cars in that situation. So you want to have these distractors and redirectors. Another great one is they love to be engaged. People love to interact, to be busy, to do meaningful things. And sometimes a distractor is, hey, I got to send out some letters today to some of the neighborhoods. Hey, Johnny, Susie, just generic names. Why don't you come help? Why don't you come give me a hand? And you know, really at the end of the day, you're using that as a distractor to get their mind off what is making them stressed in the first place. A little thing that I do like to add to redirectors and distractors are that they're not just comments like, go to your room, go sleep. That's not, because it's not meaningful. You're not allowing them an opportunity to help themselves in that moment. It'll probably, if anything, just add more to them in that situation. The last two things you should do when we think about the low arousal approach is we want to look at talking, and we call that, debriefing or venting, and we're talking informally. So like, I'm not talking a group of people get together informally. No, I'm talking you and your buddy, you and your coworker. You got someone you trust and that you can talk to. You want to talk to them. You want to debrief with them. You want to sort of get that stuff off your chest. Obviously there's some parameters there. You want to make sure that it's somebody that's confidential, that you can trust, that is going to be open-minded, non-judgmental. But that's so important, because the last part of this is that obviously it's an incident that's probably going to require recording. It's going to require information that's documented. And as we know, or most of us should know, documentation is extremely important. It needs to be accurate. It needs to be about the events and not about your feelings. So what we find, or what we hope to find, is that by allowing somebody to talk and to get that stuff off their chest before they start writing, the notes or the documents isn't about their feelings. It's more about the actual events. And in that way, that can be used as a learning opportunity to change plans, to change the way in which we support that person, and that we can communicate with one another so that we all approach or support this person in a similar way. So that, in a nutshell, is the low arousal approach, but it incorporates so many other aspects of that. I do have a few other points to add to that, Emma, but is there anything that you feel like you want me to expand on from that?
Expand how you want, I guess.
Okay. So after we think about sort of the low arousal approach, I do want to put a little bit of weight into a couple of people that low arousal was created off of, or that we sort of use as resources. And those two people are, first of all, one is David Petaniak. And David, we were very fortunate enough to have him here in Sydney a few years back before COVID. And he really pushes a relationship-based approach. And PDP, person-centered, low arousal approach, and then relationships, I believe, are pivotal into where we're moving into supporting these individuals. David really looks at it as, I know he makes comments about programming and that sometimes we get so program focused. I'm not going to get into that because I do understand the importance of programming and consistency and stuff, but we have to look at the moment. We have to look at, if the person is stressed, how do we de-stress them, before we even start thinking about teaching life skills and getting into those plans. And, it gets back to, do our residents or support people like us? Do they care about us? Do they feel like there's somebody they can trust? And we have a due diligence that I don't expect everybody to like everybody they support, but they have to be empathetic and compassionate towards them. They have to understand that the better the relationship between you and the person you support, the less work you're actually going to do. You want to go to work or go to support this person and actually enjoy your interactions, and you will actually decrease the amount of behaviors that probably happen because the person is happier. They're happy to see you. Their days, filled with more meaningful moments. And hopefully that's reciprocal in the sense that you feel the same way about the resident. So David, and you can search him as well, David Petaniak, and I think his site is deimagine.com, but we can confirm that and send that out later. And the other person that we use quite a bit in the training is Professor Martin Seligman. He's a positive psychologist, and the term he coined that we use a lot is the Perma. It's an acronym to really promote a positive framework of well-being, relationships, healthy, positive relationships, and then into Martin Seligman, we talked about Perma, and I'm not going to get into that too deep, but it really looks at the aspects of positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaningful work or meaningful interactions, and then accomplishments and achievements. And if you think about our own life, this is the reflective piece of low arousal, is that if you're reflective and you look at the things that make you happy in your life, the residents or the people who support are no different. So if I applied Perma to my life, I'd be looking at positive relationships. Well, I have a beautiful, loving, caring wife. I have a beautiful, loving family that's there. I have good relationships with them, good with my coworkers. Engagement. I come to work. I enjoy work. Then I go play sports, and then I'm doing things. I pick around the house. So I'm not going to go through them all, but you can see that if these acronyms or these positive approaches help me, or limit my behaviors, then most likely it's going to do the same for our residents and the people we support as well. So they're the two people I want to touch on. And the last thing before I do get Emma to ask the next question is the hyper and hypo arousal. So this is why low arousal is important to define, because it's not no arousal. I tell people that low arousal doesn't mean you do nothing and you just ignore everything. No, you still need some arousal level for a peak performance or interaction with the residents. But hypo and hyper arousal levels, that's our fight, flight, and freeze. And this is just as important for our residents than it is for us, because we need to know how we handle those stressful situations. Are we somebody who freezes? Are we somebody who flights? Are we somebody that fights in that situation? And to know our residents in those situations will make more sense. And I'll probably expand on that later when we start getting into changing and managing behavior. So Emma, give me a break. Ask me a question.
All right. So how is the low arousal approach used at Breton Ability Centre?
Okay. I got little notes here just to keep me on track. So low arousal has been used here at Breton Ability Centre for, well, like I said, I've been training since 2015. So we really started training staff probably 2015, 2016. So we've been doing it for a while. We use it as a managing challenging behavior course in place of another managing challenging behavior course that some organizations use. So we change that, and we really try to, it's a cultural change. It's not just education and training and learning skills and techniques and physical techniques to deal with physical behaviors as well. It's more of a cultural change. So how do we use it here? Well, we always try to apply it in crisis situations. So when we have code whites, as most of you are probably familiar with, we really want to try to apply, that low arousal approach in those situations. It's trying to get them out of that stressful situation and not trying to teach them. I think that's one of the biggest things that staff utilize here, is that they understand that in that crisis moment, there's no point in trying to pass on learning or education or training to that person. It's simply, let's get them in a better state of mind so that we can support them better. I really feel that BAC uses the low arousal approach through great teamwork. We're very fortunate to have a good core staff who work together. They communicate. They're great at debriefing, as I spoke about earlier, with one another. That's one thing I'm really proud of. The staff, I hear people saying, oh, they do that very well. So-and-so is always there to talk to. I love hearing that, because as I'm sure you're seeing, low arousal has a lot to do with us just as much as it has to do with the resident. It's applying and understanding that things are now person-centered. It's about knowing the resident. It's about knowing what their wants and needs are. And the important thing is to communicate and be consistent with that information, so that if we know that, Johnny or Susie, like something, or this is how they like to be interacted with, then we should be communicating that, whether it's in plans or whatnot. So, and if required, we use low arousal here. There is a component to the training program that does do physical skills. We shouldn't be going hands-on unless it's an absolute last resort, or if the individual is in immediate risk of harming themselves or others. But we do understand that sometimes there are physical interactions where, wrist is grabbed or the hair is grabbed, that we want to teach those physical skills to get out of those situations, to then apply your low arousal to, get away from that individual and get yourself to safety, and apply it in that sense. And then, to come back later and collaborate and make sure everybody's good before we sort of try to, support that individual in that moment. So I would say that in a bunch of aspects here at BAC, we apply quite well. Are there areas for improvement? Are there things that we can work on and improve on? Absolutely. The reality is that we're living in a stressful world. Things are much different than they were, even as far as close to 3-4 years ago. So we have to understand that low arousal is important because of our employees, our staff as well. We want them to think about their wellness and their mental health. So I think it's really good because low arousal fits with a lot of the new initiatives that, community services, health, the province itself is moving to. And so, yeah, we're doing really well. Definitely areas for improvement. Absolutely. Coaching opportunities daily. But we have some champions here that really advocate that and that truly understand it. And we hear of other facilities, not just the, BAC, that are making great strides. So it really is a cultural change. It's really a team approach, and yeah.
All right, great. So going off of that, how are behaviors viewed while using the low arousal approach?
So it's very hard to tell somebody not to take a behavior personal in a moment, that they could be saying things that are very, detrimental to that person. And I get that. But at the end of the day, we try to have people view behaviors as not being personal. We want people to understand that, as I said earlier, behaviors always have a function or a reason to why they happen. They're usually communicative or there's purposeful. Most times they're actually in pain and they can't communicate that. So they're stressed. They're looking through their trauma lens. So we view behaviors as trying not to be personal, and that we try to understand that it is, trauma informed, that this individual is most likely in trauma, and that's why they're doing what they're doing, or they're saying what they're saying. Again, not to always go back to think about our own life, but you think of when we're stressed and, when we're not having a good day, and, somebody says something, and it rubs us the wrong way. What are our responses? And would that person consider our behavior to be, challenging? If so, would they take it personal? So most times we can get through that and understand that sometimes we have a bad day, sometimes there's behaviors. We just want to do our best to support each other. So we try to look at behaviors and view them as not personal, focus through the trauma lens. And it's really just to support each other, that if we do deal with the behavior that affects us, that we're there to support each other. I know the staff are great to switch in and out, give each other a little break, get that person away from that individual, just to give them sort of that mental break for both the resident and the staff as well. I think our staff, and we're very fortunate, lucky to have behavioral interventionists who really do a good job of, educating and communicating, behaviors and behaviors of concern, and, having those plans and that information, that in line with how we view those behaviors are very important. Because if I know it's not personal and I understand that this person's in trauma, my goal should be to help this person, to get them in a better state of mind so that I can support them. Getting back to the I'm sorry, it's okay. It's all right. You're stressed. You had a traumatic event. It could be a birthday of a loved one. Like, sometimes we just don't know. So I tell people we should use behaviors as a reason to find out more, to sort of dig a little deeper to why this is happening. Because nothing's harder than seeing a resident go through these behaviors and feel like sometimes there's really nothing that we can do, or we don't know what to do, but sometimes just being supportive and being there and showing that person that you're empathetic and you're caring is all you need to do. So it's trying to change that mindset of behaviors of always being negative and bad, and more of a communicative, purposeful meaning.
Okay, thank you. So is low arousal approach used for short-term or long-term behavioral management?
Good question. So in short, it really is used for short term. You can apply low arousal to every day of your life, though. But when it comes to behavioral management, low arousal is really short term, in the moment. You're in a crisis. And don't forget, when I say crisis, I don't want some of the listeners out there thinking that crisis is, short stints or short bursts of very intense behavior. It's not. A crisis could run for days. Some residents or people could be in crisis for weeks or even longer. So when I say in the moment, or for as long as the crisis is happening, it's not always quick. It's not always short bursts. It could be very long in nature. So we try to focus in the moment. We really try to focus on reducing stress in that moment to really help support that person. We work on long-term behavioral management and change through our plans, through our communication. I'm thinking of the example that was given to me, and I believe it was from David Petaniak when he was there, and we talked about ideal structures of learning for people, like somebody with autism or something would, we want them to go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday from 9 to 3 every single day, and we want that consistency, and that's important. But sometimes we need to look at, well, how much stress are we putting in on that individual in that moment if they really don't want to go? And we know that resident well enough that they don't want to go. But we know that, like, on a Wednesday afternoon, for whatever reason, the person wants to go to school and they get 4 great hours of learning and life skills in. Isn't that just important as trying to, be consistent with the program? We just try to be a little bit more mindful and flexible around the fact that who's really going to learn, including us, in a stressful situation when really that's not what isn't on their mind in that moment. Another probably bad example, sorry, I had good ones, but I'm blank now, is like when I'm in Halifax and I'm driving, and it was a long drive and the traffic's really bad and I'm really stressed out. I don't know where I'm going. I should know where I'm going. I've been there enough, and the radio's loud. And then all of a sudden, like, I just smack the radio, I turn it off, and I say to myself, okay, where am I going? Well, the reality is that the music or the radio had really nothing to do with the fact that you were lost or you thought you were lost in that situation. It's just removing a layer of stress or a layer of sensory that I can focus on what I'm doing. It really has nothing to do with it, but we seem to think that sometimes it does. So it's no different for the people we support in that behavioral management change. Is we need to think about, where are they in that level of, baseline triggering, crisis, those situations that we really need to, we want these individuals to be in a good state of mind when they're learning. So, and after we get through the short-term approach of low arousal, we start to focus on long-term consistency, and communication are so important in that behavioral change long-term. You've got to lay that foundation of relationships, positive interaction, the low arousal approach, bringing that positive sense of environment. And then you can go at the plan, you can go at to that learning. But I'm telling you, you've got to be consistent and you've got to communicate with one another. It takes a village for sure.
So you already kind of touched on this question a little bit, but how does the low arousal approach involve physical intervention?
Yeah, so I did touch on it, but I think it's good just to reiterate. So with low arousal and with our policies here anyways, we always look at physical intervention as an absolute last resort. Individuals at immediate harm of hurting themselves or others. But sometimes we understand that, if a person we support is going after another individual, that sometimes, we have to think about what we do in those situations. Or like I said earlier, if we have Somebody that grabs our wrist and we feel like it's in a vulnerable situation, we might use those physical interventions. We really try to promote a culture that, hands-on or physical is a last resort, but we also understand staff safety is pivotal and the utmost importance, that we want people to feel, staff to feel confident and competent in the skills in which we taught them in that situation. And we also have to think about self-injurious behavior. And sometimes physical intervention is not only due to behaviors, but sometimes it's because of a self-injurious behavior that somebody has, that we may be able to support them with some type of therapeutic touch or movement. The thing I do want to reiterate with low arousal is that our physical interventions are least restrictive. They allow movement, and I can't show you here today, but again, the sites are great. And if we do look at running some training opportunities for the public, you would see then, but nothing is restraining, nothing is holding down. Those days of sort of, restraints is, our goal is the days of the past. We really need to look at the evidence-based research that shows that allowing movement, allowing people to move and get that energy out is so important. Physical movements in themselves, walking, running, is so important to de-escalating an individual. So, but this is why laying the foundation of the low arousal approach is so important to talk about physical interventions, because if you think about what we went over before, personal space, eye contact, touch, noise, blah, 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 then you know that you're almost not putting yourself in that situation that you can have somebody physically interact with you or intervene with you in that situation. Not saying it doesn't happen, because the world we live in, the people we support, sometimes things are out of the blue and they do happen quite quickly, that we have these physical skills to utilize and to apply in those situations. So but we try to promote a world and we try to promote a framework to say that if we don't ever have to go and become physical with somebody, isn't that the goal? Isn't that what we want? And hate to sound like a broken record, but think about your own life. And, not my example, but I think about an example that was used in the course, and they talked about they could always remember that when they were young, their big brother or big sister used to sit on their chest with their hands and they couldn't move, and they used to try to dribble that spit on them, and they would feel so so overwhelmed that they couldn't move, that they almost felt trapped. That could be how a resident feels in that situation, not having the ability to move around. So.
All right. So just a low arousal approach focus on changing or managing behaviors.
So at the end of the day, low arousal is about managing behaviors. We don't forget about the importance of trying to change a behavior, but managed behavior is definitely at the forefront. This is where we really try to work on talking about our proactive strategies. I tell people, if you put 90% of proactive in, you'll only have to do 10% reactive. But if you put 10% proactive in, then you're going to have to be dealing with 90% of those behaviors. And as we know, in any sort of sector and in any sort of framework, we manage those days, we manage those behaviors. I was a teacher for a few years in local school board, and classroom management, managing the individuals, the people, and the children, the students in your class, and no different to sort of where I am now, that everybody's different. Not everybody is the same. They're all individual. So we really try to promote that management piece. The thing I like to go into with this is I know there's a technical term of what a challenging behavior is, but I like to sort of say, well, to me, a challenging behavior or behavior of concern is really a behavior that peeves you off or upsets you, or your reaction to it. If I'm sitting here and I'm teaching, I'm presenting to you guys today, and I'm here knocking in the background while I'm talking, some of you probably could drown that out and you're like, it doesn't bother me whatsoever. And some of you are like, oh, he's got to stop that because I can't focus and that behavior's got to stop. So sometimes it's how it affects us in that moment. So when I say managing that behavior, a lot of times it's managing that response to that behavior and how you respond to that in that situation. And not to go back to our own lives, but again, have you ever tried to change a behavior of a loved one, of somebody that you care about, that you feel like you have the best ability to, but yet it's almost impossible to change that behavior for them. So you end up supporting them, you end up managing that interaction, you end up trying to give them skills and teach them techniques to sort of change that for themselves. When I talk about managing behaviors as well, I also think about that we want to be mindful of, consequences and punishment. I know that we live in a world where people feel like we always have to give consequences or punish people for what they've done wrong. And I know some people always utilize or bring up the, teaching my children right or wrong in those situations. But we have to understand sometimes the individuals we're supporting, the mental health concerns, the comorbid, the different struggles that they have, not just from a mental health standpoint or a psychological standpoint, but from a physical standpoint, from an economic standpoint. It's very diverse and complex individuals that we're supporting sometimes. So we really want to try to manage that situation and try to support them. Changing that behavior in our cases here, at Breton Ability Centre, really involves a multidisciplinary team. It's really a team approach. You got your staff who know the individual, that have a lot of insight. You have your behavioralists who are creating plans to try to have these behaviors be more in line with our goal, our community living, having more residents out in the community to interact with the world. We do have a due diligence to help teach them those life skills, but we're not going to get anywhere if those individuals are in stress. And that's why I tell people to manage before they look at changing. So it's to look at that framework and to also, not to always go back to David, but trying to teach them in a moment when they're drowning, to take off the lens and put it on your own eyes to see where they are in that situation. And sometimes giving consequences and punishments in that moment. Who was it for? Was it really for that person to learn, or was it for you to sort of feel like, regaining or having that control? Because it can be scary. It can be scary to feel like you're losing control in that situation. But in the big picture, it's actually giving everybody more control in that situation, including the individual we're supporting. So for the question, managing behaviors is really our key, our goal. But we never forget about the end goal of changing behaviors to more of a positive, community accepted behavior. So, yeah.
Thanks, Adam. I think we touched on this a little bit too, but we're going to still ask it. Is the low arousal approach only used when aggressive behaviors are present?
So, no, it can be applied in any stressful situation. That's why the factors of building relationships and really setting that, positive environment will hopefully mitigate the fact that you shouldn't be only using low arousal when it gets to the point where it feels like it's out of control. Again, to get back to proactive strategies, teamwork and really applying Perma and, really creating that happiness in that person's life should mitigate those aggressive behaviors naturally. So you should really be applying it all the time, but you really should be really focusing on the principles of low arousal when we feel like we're in that crisis situation. We know the resident or the people we support very well. we should be able to see where an escalation is happening or where triggers are starting to escalate this resident or this person's behavior to the point where we might get in crisis. We should be thinking, how do we get this person back down? How do we, redirectors, distractors, those types of things that we want to try to not have the behavior get to a point where it's aggressive. But if it does, and the person's in crisis and the behavior becomes aggressive in nature, then really think about your low arousal principles. Hope that it doesn't get to the point where it's required that physical intervention is required. We really try to promote big spaces, outside, out in the grounds, where an individual can feel like they're in a safe space, even their room sometimes, and that's why I tell people not to always use a room or their bedroom if we feel like, they need a place to de-escalate after a stressful situation, unless they look at it as a place of safety. Because if not, then they're not going to look at their bedroom as that anymore. It's going to be looked at as a consequence. But trying to get them outside, trying to get them to places that, they can naturally de-escalate themselves. And plus it gives you as a care person to sort of apply those principles to keep yourself safe, to keep your coworker safe, and to keep the residents safe as well. But yeah, in a nutshell, be proactive, people. Really apply this to your daily philosophy. If you don't believe in it, then it's going to be hard for you to apply it. But really understand that, we join this profession, we join this career to care for people, to make a difference. And remember, that's why you became what you are today. And if you keep that close to your heart and you guide it with that, you should be applying it all the time, and it'll become natural, become second nature. But if you don't, when it hits the fan, you really start to think and collaborate and teamwork and really apply those approaches. Just never lose sight of the individual and how they are in that moment. And I think that's important.
Okay, so we're on to our last two questions now. So how does the use of the low arousal approach lead to inclusion?
So I hope people aren't getting tired of my voice. I'm glad you're asking the questions, because I know I could talk for a long time. So I'm hoping people are getting some information that is helpful. If anything else, at least opening up the mindset of wanting to learn more. So a little break there. So inclusion. So it's very important. I mean, this is where we, as not just Nova Scotia, not just Breton Ability Centre, but as a nation, and the world is much smaller now too. So we can go even as far as to say the world, and that's why we're very lucky to collaborate with Studio 3, because they've already been all over the world, and they know that inclusion and the human rights of persons, these are pivotal pieces to this. And that's what I love about low arousal, is that it really lines up with the philosophies that we all have, that we really want our people to have a better life, a more meaningful life, a very good quality of life. Remember, every person we support, whether it's a loved one that we know and we care about, or it's a resident or a person we support that we don't know much about, it's somebody's mother, father, brother, sister. It's somebody. It's a person. It's really looking at it that in that lens. So when we talk about inclusion and we think about PDP and we think about all the things we're talking about, it's putting the person first. It's looking at what do they want to do? What do they want to become successful doing? We shouldn't be determining or defining what is success for them or what makes them happy. They should be doing that. So if we can create relationships, if we can have our residents and the people we support less stressed, then they're going to be able to learn more. They're going to be able to develop and build skills, meaningful skills that they can apply to their life in the community. And not only is it to put all the efforts into the person, because we have to understand that it's a person, we're going to have ups and downs and whatnot, but it's to bring awareness and to advocate for them in society. And I think the big thing is to, the biggest obstacle we have to support people and to integrate and to include is society. It's the people that don't know, that aren't educated, that aren't aware. The days of people we support in the community and, people staring at them, looking at them, asking questions, I would hope to think that that's a day of the past, that everybody is willing and accepting to have individuals be integrated into a meaningful part of a community. So if we're doing this, if we're keeping individuals, stress-free or reduce stress, and we're having more time to teach and to support them, and there's less incidents and there's less things of concern for us, then we can integrate in a community and partner with different organizations. And I'm just there's not enough time in the day, as you can probably tell with how I talk, to really thank a bunch of organizations and people that I know that are already ahead of the curve, that are trying to promote this, that are having our residents work at their organizations, that we're partnering with different societies, and really just bringing awareness that these individuals are humans as well, that they have an equal right under the Human Rights Act to be included. So if we're teaching this framework and we're bringing awareness within BAC and we're expanding to Nova Scotia, then the more people that know, the more people that ask questions, the further it is that we can expand and really break down that stigma of society, and making it difficult for them to be successful, because there's the barriers. It's not the people we support, it's not the skills that we teach them, it's to have them be accepted into society, into our communities. And I have to say, and again, I'm getting some side plugs in here, but we're here in Sydney River and Cox Heath and Howe Center in the area. And I know here for us at Breton Ability Centre, we're very fortunate, and our local community, our people that live in their homes, the organizations, they're so good to our residents, and they understand and they look at it through the lens, not just the low arousal lens, but the person-centered lens, that they're there to support and teach and work to have those individuals have that meaningful aspect to their life. So it is quite motivating. It's very exciting, but it definitely doesn't come without its difficult conversations, and to remember that, to remind yourself of why you're here, and to be that advocate, and to be willing to take a step out onto the ledge to say, hey, I'm here to support this person, I'm here to help them, and they can be just as successful as anybody else. So yes, it does lead to inclusion, in my opinion.
All right, so last question. Does the low arousal approach have benefits for caregivers or supports who put it into use?
Excuse me. So before I expand too much on that, I want everybody to understand that a big piece to this is staff well-being and staff safety. So many times the message gets portrayed, no matter what it is, that it's all about the residents. It's about only about them, and that sometimes we forget about the care, or the caregiver or the supporter. We understand and are very mindful, and with this training, is that we don't just think about the resident, we're thinking also about the person, the support person. We don't just walk into work and forget about all of our life's problems, and we don't leave work and go home and forget about our work. And for those of us who can, kudos, great, and please share your strategies with others. But it definitely overlaps, and it crosses with everything. So we want staff and carers to know that this is about you as well. It's about your well-being. It's teaching you skills, of course, and knowledge, and building capacity and competency, and giving you physical skills that you can use in those situations. I get that, and we want you to be safe, but also reflect, think about yourself, and take care of yourself, and take care of each other. And with this philosophy, and with low arousal, and with the course, we really spend a lot of time on the well-being of the support person, And when we say that, you know, a lot of incidents are sometimes inadvertently created or caused by staff, we're not saying that's your fault. My God, it's not. But you think about, you know, your third 12-hour shift in a week. You're thinking about your, you know, the things that are going on and COVID and mental health, and you know, you yourself have a lot going on, and we want to be mindful of that. So we're trying to help you to become a better person for yourself, because we know then that translates and correlates to better, more meaningful, positive support for, you know, the residents. So for me, it's beneficial for the supporter, because you learn these skills, you become knowledgeable, you become aware, you learn skills that you can apply to your own life, and that's something that, you know, we do have a lot of people come out. I run a course and I have people come up to me and say, you know what, I applied some of those approaches or some of those aspects of the approaches to my personal life with my children, and like it works, you know. And I sort of smile and laugh and say, you know, at the end of the day, it's, you know, just simply sometimes taking a step back and, you know, thinking about your child, you know, through the lens of what they're going through right now. And sometimes it's really a pick your battle type approach, that, you know, you want as many interactions with your loved ones to be positive in nature, and you know, so not only to apply to their work life, but to apply to their personal life, and to hopefully develop skills that they can help themselves, help each other, you know. But it also creates a positive environment as well. So it's not just for the individual, it can also help teams, it can help groups, it can help promote that sort of culture of you know, support and caring for one another, you know, that you're helping each other, you're picking each other up, and maybe not immediately, but you will see a positive change. You will see, you know, a more better approach of de-escalating. You'll be dealing with crisis less. Crisis will not seem so traumatizing, you know, because you have each other, you're supporting each other. So for me, it's to never forget that, yes, we're really focusing on the resident, but really this is a huge, you know, a huge aspect to low arousal, and to this is for the betterment of that support person, you know, to remember, we haven't forgot about you. If you're not your best version of yourself, then we're not going to have the best version of support for our residents. So for me, it has lots of benefits, and you get what you put in. You know, of course, I haven't, you know, I've ran into lots of times where, you know, people, you know, find it hard to really embrace the approach. But once they have one of those aha moments, or two of those aha moments where something clicks or something, you know, works, it really sort of is that self-learning approach, and that journey that takes them to that point where they start to do it naturally, and they don't even think about doing it, they're just doing it. So yeah.
All right, so that's all I have. I don't know if you wanted to add anything else, Adam.
People are probably like, please don't. So I could definitely continue to expand on certain aspects. I really enjoyed and liked the questions, because I think we really encompassed a lot of the philosophy and stuff. I know we didn't talk about the training or the courses or that opportunity, so maybe we'll see if that's something that people are interested in. But I think at the end of the day, I think this is a good opportunity to put it back to our viewers to see sort of what's going on.
Yeah, for sure. So we're going to open the space up now for you guys to ask some questions. We're just going to ask, though, if you could put them in the chat, and then that way we can kind of keep track of them better. I'll call on whoever it is that asked the question. So Kaylee said this has been amazing. Thank you, Kaylee.
If there's no questions yet, I will talk about the training, I guess, just since, you know, we did have 2 hours booked. I know we don't have to fill the time, but so the low arousal training is something that we here at our facility use as a managing challenge behavior course. So it replaced the previous managing challenge behavior course we used in the past. But historically, there's 3 versions of this training. There's a 1-day theory, there's a 2-day managing challenging behavior course, and there's a 3-day managing challenging behavior course. So we usually do a needs assessment with the facilities that are interested to see what it is, that they actually need. Is it more of just a theory and the understanding, or is it more like we're into some serious behaviors that can become physical and we need those physical skills as well? We usually then move to a 2 or 3 day training course. But also there are 4-hour low arousal theory sessions that Studio 3 do offer on their website. That you can go to. If you want to go through me, I probably can get you a discount for anybody here, and sort of anybody that participated today, that I can probably help you with that to get more than what I just told you today. But the training courses, again, are the 1, 2, and 3 day, depending on your needs assessment of your organization. But I know COVID has really changed the way we haven't really done any external stuff recently. It's been a lot of online virtual stuff. But yeah, 1, 2, or 3 day courses. If your facility like Breton Ability Centre under Community Services, who support, individuals that do have the potential to be challenging or behaviors of concern, then a 3 day is most likely going to be your option. So.
Thanks again, Adam. I don't see any questions yet. We can wait a couple minutes and see if we get anything. I guess too, since we don't really have a bunch of questions coming in, if people wanted to even turn their mics on and ask, that might be good.
And no question is a stupid question or a silly question. It can be about me and my journey. It could be about opportunities, contacts, whatever. It's up to you guys. Floor is yours.
We have a quiet bunch today.
I will add just a little bit more. We do have a few trainers internally here that we've trained through the Train the Trainer program. We have trained other trainers across the province. So, and we do have trainers that did work at Breton Ability Centre that now are working at different, for different organizations. They're all amazing. They're all great. They can't technically teach. Everything has to go through me, but I know they're probably coaching and passing on knowledge at their organizations. So there are people out there like me that do have the training program that you could pick their brain on, and they're amazing people as well. So we're very fortunate to have a lot of great trainers across the province. So we're very fortunate that it takes a big heart, a good person, somebody who cares to be a good trainer.
All right. I don't know if we're going to get any questions, so I guess we can end it here. We're going to be sending out a short survey for everyone who is in the webinar. It takes about a minute to complete. We just are looking for some feedback to see if you enjoyed the webinar, if you've been to our past webinars, and what you might like to see in the future. We'll also be sending out the recording, I believe, tomorrow morning. So if you wanted to look at it, and kind of go over the information again, you have the opportunity to do so. Anyways, thank you all so much for joining. And thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Emma, for taking the lead on this. And thank you, everybody who participated. I hope it was, informative, if nothing else. I much like being in person with people, and as you can tell by my personality, but I did the best I could over this platform. So thank you, and thank you for having patience for me for rambling, and hopefully somebody got something out of this. And please don't hesitate in contacting me. Emma will give everybody my contact if you have any other questions or require more information.
Perfect. I see that Kelly asked a question. So we'll be sending out an email with a link to the recording. That link will send you to our YouTube page. The YouTube page also should be in the chat, but I'll send it again. And that way too, you can see our previous webinars as well. But I think that is it. So thank you, everyone. We hope you have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
See ya.